Hey beauties, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is for my mature skin hotties out there and anyone who's looking for something that is simple to achieve, simple makeup, very natural makeup, and it is not time consuming. This look took me approximately like 21 minutes to do, but I was filming, so if I wasn't filming, I'm like certain that it would take me 15. So let me just go ahead and jump right into this. I'm going to say to begin with, you have to use your skincare. If you want your skin to look its absolute best, skincare is first. So before I applied all this makeup and before I apply my makeup anytime, I always do my skincare routine. So I will link that down below. Skincare routine, wait 20 minutes, and then go in and jump into this. So the first thing you want to do is prime your skin, of course, after your skincare. And what I use is the Natural Radiance by MAC. The reason why I use this stuff in the video is because this is both hydrating and oil controlling. So for my skin in particular, I am combination, but I know that mature skin tends to be either more dehydrated or dry. So you want your skin to really glow, and so that's why I use this. But you guys can also use something light like a BB from MAC. It comes in a compact, and that's really nourishing on your skin. It feels so nice. So if you're extra dry, choose that instead of this, and it works as a primer as well. You could also choose to use something like the Tinted Moisturizer by Laura Mercier. This is really, really nice and pretty. If you chose to use either the BB or this underneath your makeup, you could really use that instead of foundation. It depends on if you have a lot of problem areas or if you want more coverage. Just depends on what you are looking for. I am going to use a foundation, so I used a primer like this with no tint to it whatsoever. But then because I have large pores and a few fine lines, I also used Makeup Forever Skin Smoothing Skin Equalizer, the primer. And I put that just on my T-zone. If you have large pores, I say use two primers. Use something that's going to hydrate your mature skin, but then use something that's going to fill. If you use something that's going to fill all over your entire face, you're likely going to get too dry. It's going to be flaky, cakey, no matter what you put on top. After you have finished your primer, go ahead and start applying your foundation. The foundation that I use today is MAC Mineralize foundation. This stuff is so light. It's so nice on your skin. It really nourishes it. It looks natural. It is beautiful. And it's also a dewy foundation. So if you're somebody that has oily skin, you're probably not going to like this, at least not for very long unless you prep your skin correctly. But for mature skin or dry skin, this is so beautiful. I can wear it for a few hours as long as I prime my face accordingly. Again, this primer, it controls oil, so I'm not going to end up with a greasy mess by the end of the day. I chose to put this on with a beauty blender, a damp beauty blender. I love the Beauty Blender. It is my choice for putting on concealer and foundation, and a lot of times my powder as well. But if you don't like the Beauty Blender, you can use a brush. And a brush that I would like to use on mature skin is the MAC 190. And there's also a square one that I actually really like a little bit better. But you would want to take this and use downward motions. Do not buff upwards because we have tiny little hairs on our face. And when you go upwards, it just adds that makeup to it and it stands up and they're way more noticeable. So always paint downwards, okay? Now another reason why I like the Beauty Blender is because it picks up excess makeup. So if you tend to have cakiness in your smile lines or underneath your eyes, a Beauty Blender really picks up the excess so that does not happen as easily. So if you want to use a brush, I suggest using a sponge afterwards and just going around your problem areas and picking up any extra makeup. The concealer I chose to use is also Mineralize from MAC. These products have 77 bioavailable minerals in them, so they really work with your skin. If they bioavailable, your skin recognizes them. So if they're not bioavailable minerals, then they're just sitting on your face. They're not doing anything but sounding fancy. So that is why I love these. This is very lightweight. I put it on a little less heavily than I would typically, but I still highlighted. You just don't want to use something that is too bright for mature skin. You want to use something that is 1 to 2 shades lighter. I typically stick with just 1 shade lighter and buff it in. If you wanted to use a brush instead of a beauty blender like I did, I suggest the MAC 286, and you want to go in and buff it and push it into your skin like this. But again, I like the beauty blender because it picks up all the excess. To set the under eye area, I used MAC's Careblend powder. Careblend is specially made for not drying out your skin. So people often come to me and say, you know, my face looks too cakey. I like my makeup and then I put my powder on to set my foundation and I look really dry. MAC Careblend does not do that. So that is why I use that in this video, because you guys know I love my mineralized skin finish, and that's actually really great too. But for mature skin, I find that Careblend is just a little bit better. And for whatever reason, I used the Sigma highlighting tapered brush, and I really shouldn't have. I should have just used my MAC 135 underneath here, and that would have been completely fine, but I lost my brain for some reason, so just forgive me. You can totally use this brush for every powder that is on your face. Now, I did use a lighter powder. This one that I put underneath my eyes is in Light Plus. So if you want to keep a highlighted look, make sure you're using 2 different powder colors. So I'm going to use Light Plus here and Medium Plus here. Make sure that you do not go overboard with the powder, because anything underneath your eyes is going to make you look a little bit older. If you notice, I'm putting the powder all the way up to here, but not into where my eyes actually crease, because I don't want it to accentuate those lines, and I do not want to, again, age myself. To set my face everywhere else that I did not highlight, I used the same powder, Careblend, in Medium Plus, and I dipped this brush in there and patted it. This brush does not pick up a lot of product, so you can set your makeup without getting a cakey finish. Nobody likes to look like a cake face. Hydration is key if you have any kind of fine lines or wrinkles. Like I said, people always said that my skin looks great, I love the foundation, and then you put the powder on and they don't like it anymore. It's just because it's too dry, accentuates those areas, and we don't like that. So we're not going to do that. We're going to apply the powder very lightly, but still in a patting motion instead of a buffing motion, so that we do not disturb anything that's underneath. Again, with the same brush, I'm going to bronze up my skin. With mature skin, you do not want to contour too heavily. So I did not contour, I only bronzed. If you contour too heavily, it can make your face look a little sunken in and less plump. We want your skin to look plump, which is another reason why we want skincare underneath all this makeup, so that your skin sucks up all that moisture and looks nice and juicy and plump. So I am taking this brush and I am just buffing in a little bit of bronzer. I used NARS Laguna. Feel free to use whatever you want, just don't use anything too shimmery or too dark for your skin tone. I am placing this where I would typically bronze, from the top of the ear towards the corner of your mouth, on the corners of your forehead and around the hairline, and as well as a little bit underneath my chin, so that we don't look bronzed up here and pale down here. After we have bronzed the face, I have gotten a question with a lot of mature women about whether or not they can highlight, because they really love the look, but they say it accentuates the lines that we get right here. And what I love to use for that is a MAC cream color base. And the one that I'm using in the video is called Luna. I take this on my middle finger first, apply it, and then buff it out with my ring finger. You can totally put this on top of powders, so don't freak out. We didn't put enough powder on the face for it to really separate your makeup. So just make sure that you are patting this in and blending it out. And I'm putting it on the tops of my cheekbones, down just the bridge of my nose, and on my Cupid's bow, just to give the face a little bit more of a highlight and more glowy appearance, and it's really beautiful and youthful. If you find that you really don't like cream color bases or anything creamy on your face, I really love Becca Cosmetics, their pressed shimmering skin perfectors. The texture on those are the nicest I have found thus far, and Hourglass. Nothing that has a lot of sparkle, nothing chunky. You want something that is very, very smooth, so it will accentuate lines a lot less. So I prefer to use the cream color base, but if you want to use a powder, I would definitely suggest either Hourglass, the ambient lighting powders, or Becca Cosmetics, the shimmering skin perfector in pressed. And actually I just thought about one more, which is one of my favorites, and this is Accentuate by MAC. Again, it's not chunky or glittery, and it looks really, really nice. For my blush, I am picking up this really cool, don't know what it's called. I've had it for a while. It's by It Cosmetics. And I'm using this because it's nice and dense, and I'm picking up just a little bit of product and pressing this into my skin and buffing it out. And what I'm using is another cream color base in Rich Coral. This color is just so beautiful. I love it on the skin, especially for the springtime. But just make sure you don't overdo it. Don't get too much on the brush. If you do, wipe a little bit of the excess off on your hand and then go in. If you find that you got too much still, you can go in with your damp beauty blender and go around the edges. Don't be afraid to use a powder blush if that is what you want to do, but I would say stay away from anything glittery and, again, chunky, or that sounds so weird to call a blush chunky, but you guys know what I mean. It just accentuates any pores and fine lines. So stay with something that is a matte or satin finish and you should be good. Moving on to the eyes, I primed my eyes using the Prep and Prime 24-hour extended eye base from MAC. This is just something that's nice and creamy, has no pigmentation to it. If you want something to hide any veining or anything that's on your eyes, use a MAC Prolonged Wear Paint Pot. I like Soft Ochre and sometimes Painterly. After I've done that, I'm going to set that with MAC Brule. Typically, I love to use Blanc Type to set it, but this is a softer makeup look. I didn't want it to be as in your face white, so I used Brule, and I used that on a 227, just a fluffy brush. Then I grab MAC Kid. This is a non-shimmery, non-glittery shadow, and another question I get a lot of times when I'm working with mature skin is they say, you know, I really love this shadow, but when I apply it to my eyes, it accentuates the wrinkles on my lid. I hate that word, but they just don't like it. And whereas I might think it's beautiful, it makes them self-conscious. So I want to make everybody feel good about themselves. So in this video, I use just matte shadows. And so I'm taking Kid and I put it all on my lid and then buffed it up into the crease with a MAC with a MAC 234 brush. And I also took it underneath my lash line. I started to kind of go out like I typically do and then had to remember, whoa, Mel, pull yourself back. You do not want to bring it out too far if you have mature skin, because typically this can kind of start to sag a little bit and it makes your eyes look even more downward. We want to pull them up, so make sure that we're only putting it into the crease, on the lid, and on the lower lash line. The next shadow I'm grabbing is Brun, and this shadow is a cool tone brown, not black, and I'm just putting this on the outer V of my eye and right underneath that in the lower lash line. This is going to add a little bit of depth without it being too harsh on the eye. Next, I want to highlight the eye a little bit, but I don't want to use anything shimmery, so I go in with Blanc Type, the shadow that I typically use to set my own shadow. And I'm putting this on the inner corner and right underneath the brow bone. Now, instead of using a harsh eyeliner, I'm using MAC Carbon on a 219 brush, and I am placing this right against the lash line, but going no further than the center of the eye. I'm buffing this in instead because it makes it look a lot more seamless, a lot less harsh, and it's really user-friendly. It's easy to do. If you find that you like liner more, go ahead and do the same thing with a pencil liner and then buff it out with the same brush. I'm going underneath as well, just to, again, give it a little bit more depth on this lower lash line. And I really think this looks beautiful, seamless, and effortless. Go in with your favorite mascara. I finally got my favorite back, and I really love this for mature ladies, hotties, because it has a teeny tiny little wand. When you are applying your mascara, and you have hooded eyes who have a little bit of loose skin or anything like that, it's very important to have a small, got a hair attached to this. It is important to have a small wand. That way it's a lot easier to maneuver and you have less mess ups. With a bigger brush, you tend to hit the lid a little bit more, and underneath you're hitting it all underneath the skin, and it's just a mess to deal with. If that ever happens to you, don't rub it away immediately. Wait for it to dry, and once it dries, you can typically just pull it away with a brush and just buff it off. Make sure that you apply mascara to your lower lashes as well. This really opens up the eye for a youthful, beautiful look. And then another little trick that I like to do after I've applied my mascara is to go in with this teeny tiny brush, look down and kind of twirl on the back part of my lashes to add a little bit more length. Another thing that I love about this mascara is that it is not waterproof. However, it does not reliquify, so it doesn't transfer. It is a tubing mascara, and so it doesn't leave you looking like a panda either when you go to take it off. It comes off in little tubes, it's clean, and there's no black mess afterwards. Moving on to brows. I'll admit I kind of have fluffy brows to begin with, so it's hard for me to show you guys on myself, but let me explain. I like to go ahead and push the brows upwards, and then I take, this is an Anastasia Beverly Hills number 12 brush, and I'm taking Brun. This is a cool tone brown. My eyebrow hairs are black. So you want to use something that, if your brow hairs are really dark, use something a little bit cooler. And then if you have really light brows, just use a color in your hair. If you have reddish tones in your hair, I love MAC Saddle. And if you have brown, I love Brun because you can really soften them up. There's just, I would say go into a MAC store and say, hey, I want to use a shadow for my brows. What color would you suggest? And they will be on top of that, boo. So I'm taking this brush and I'm starting anywhere that I have some sparse brow, and I'm filling in, and then I'm taking the extra, and right up here my brow hairs go up, so I'm flicking the brush upward, but I'm using the excess product because I do not want the front of the brow to be too harsh. You never want this front part to be too harsh. And then I go up top and fill in the sparse areas and on the tail. Again, I'm not filling in the entire brow because I want this to look natural and soft. Typically, I like to set my brows using the Pro Longwear Brow Set, but again, my hairs are just really thick and it looks too overdone, so I didn't do that today. If you have sparse hairs or not enough, go in for this. It's like mascara for your eyebrows and it's amazing. Now that we're done with our eyes, I'm moving on to lips. And the very first thing I always do is prime them. So I used MAC Prep and Prime Lip Primer, and then I waited about 30 seconds to a minute before I started with the products. The liner that I'm using is Half Red by MAC, and I am using this in small strokes and then kind of buffing away. I'm doing this very carefully and building it up because I do not want a harsh line. I do not want one big line around my lips. So I'm doing it softly, buffing it away, and then slowly filling in the lip halfway, not all the way, and buffing that out as well before I go in with my lipstick. And the lipstick I chose is Viva Glam 5. This is a luster finish, so it's not going to be too heavy on the lips, and it's not going to be super drying either. So it gives a nice sheen and a beautiful color without it being too much. So that's it, guys. I hope you learned a thing or two. If not, I'm sorry. If you did, awesome. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I will do what I can to help you out. And I hope everyone has a great day, and please subscribe.